Hello, welcome back to Math 8. This is a video over Section 8, and this is Unit 3. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be interpreting two-way tables, all right? So we filled out two-way tables in the last one. Now we're going to take a filled-out table, and we're going to interpret and analyze that table, okay? We will use frequencies to describe possible association between these two variables, all right? So let's take a look at the first one. Okay, the 8th graders at City Middle School took a survey in which they were asked whether being popular, playing sports, or getting good grades is most important. The results are shown in the frequency two-way table. Okay, so this question is asking what is the frequency of girls who think getting good grades is most important, and then what is the frequency of boys who think playing sports is most important. So when we're looking at that, and it says, what is the frequency, okay, we just need to answer that question. So what is the frequency of girls who think getting good grades is most important? So let's go to girls and then grades, and that has a value of 68. So the answer to this question is 68. All right, now if we're answering the question, what is the frequency of boys who think playing sports is most important? Okay, so here's boys, okay, and then sports is 90, okay? So if it's asking us for the frequency, it's just asking us for the numbers, okay? Now the next part is a little bit different. It wants to know what is the relative frequency, okay? So relative frequency is the ratio of the subtotal to the total, okay? And so what we're going to do, we have our two-way frequency or our two-way table, okay? But what we're going to do is we're going to determine the relative frequency for the two-way table, okay? And so what we're going to do is look at our value over here. So this last column is going to be 100%, okay? So, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the total number of boys and figure out the percentage of boys to girls based off this table. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take 214 and divide it by 450. Okay, so 214 divided by 450, and that's going to give me approximately 47.5%. So let me come in here, 47.5%. Okay, now the other thing I want to do is do 236 divided by 450 to determine the percentage of girls. Okay, so 236 divided by 450, and that gives me 52 point, and we'll just call that 0.5. So 52.5%. Now the cool thing is if you take 47.5 and add 52.5, that should give you 100, okay? Your percents should add to 100 here. Okay, now what we also want to find out is the relative frequency of popularity, sports, and grades as percentages, okay? So in this, we're going to take 130 divided by 450, so 130 divided by 450, and that's going to give me 28.8, we'll round that to 28.9%. Okay. And then I want to find the percentage of students that like sports. So 188 divided by 450. And that's going to give me 41.7 repeating, which will round up to 41.8. So 41.8%. Okay. And then for grades, I'm going to do 132 divided by 450, and that's going to give me 29.3. Okay, so 29.3%. Now, when you round, it might be a little bit weird, but let's do 28.9 plus 41.8 plus 29.3, and we should get 100, and we do. Okay, and so that's the idea of what we want to do when we're trying to determine the relative frequency. All right, now what we can do, and the next thing we want to talk about is determining relative frequency by column. Okay, so this is what we're doing. We're doing it by column. So we have our two-way table, okay, but we have a relative frequency table that's determined by the column. So, as I look at this, we want to figure out, all right, how do we get these numbers of 46.2%? And how you get that is by taking 60 divided by 130. All right, so if you take 60 and divide it by 130, all right, that will give you 46.2%. Okay, and that's how we get 53.8. Same thing with 47.9. We just took 90 and divided it by 188. To get 52.1, we took 98 and divided it by 188. Now, what we want to put in here is that the total percent that we have is 100%. Okay, so this is each 100%. Okay, now what we want to do is determine that for the grades. We want to fill in this part, okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to put 100% down here, okay, and fill in these two rows that I have, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these numbers. So to figure out what's going to go in this row here, I'm going to do 64 divided by 132. So 64 divided by 132. And that's going to equal 48.5%. So let me come in here. Let me do 48.5%. Okay. And then let's do the next cell here, which is going to be 68 divided by 132. So 68 divided by 132. That's going to be 51.5%. So 51.5%. And that's all we want to do, okay, to fill out that column. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is figure out the rows, okay? So we can do finding relative frequency by the row. And so, same problem, but in this issue, in this scenario, we're taking the frequency, okay, and finding 28%, 42.1, and 29% by taking 60 divided by 214, taking 90 divided by 214, and 64 divided by 214, respectively. That's how we get these. So let's fill in the relative frequency for the row, okay? And so, let's go ahead and do the math. I'm going to take 70 divided by 236. So 70 divided by 236 to get 29.7% for this cell here. So 29.7%. Okay. And then for the relative frequency for sports, okay, for girls, 98 divided by 236, so 98 divided by 236, and that's going to give me 41.5%. Okay, and then to get the number that's going to go in here, I'm going to take 68 and divide it by 236, so 68 divided by 236, and that's going to give me 28.8%. So 28.8. All right, now let's add all these numbers up. So I'm going to do 29.7 plus 41.5 plus 28.8, and that gives me 100. So we're good. Now the question is why do we do this? Okay, I just kind of jumped in here and said, here's what we're doing, and you guys are just going through this and believing me. And the reason why we do it is because we want to look at the responses for popularity, okay? So if we look at popularity as a whole, we can say, well, we know that girls in this example tend to think that popularity is more important than boys do, okay? And even the same with sports, okay? They think sports are the most important, okay? And then same thing with grades, all right? Typically, that's what they favor the most, okay? Same thing over here with looking at the total of boys and the total of girls. Now, what this says is that, all right, for boys, 28% of boys think popularity is the most important. and that 42% think that sports are most important, and then 29.9% think that grades are most important. Similar with the girls as well, 29.7%, 41.5%, and then 28.8%. So sports is kind of dominant in each of those, okay? So you can analyze those tables and look at percents within your two-way table. Okay, on this last page, what we want to do is we want to determine if there is an association in a two-way table, okay? Now, just looking at our numbers here, it's hard for us to see if there is a pattern, and that's what an association is. So an association, identifying a pattern, okay, / draw conclusions, or jump to conclusions. Okay, and so, what we use the relative frequency table for is to analyze this and draw conclusions, okay? So we want to identify the categorical variables, okay? So we've got, boys and girls, okay? So type of person, type of student, and then determining whether they can whistle or not whistle, okay? And what we want to do is compare the relative frequencies by row or column. Okay, so what we've done here is we've identified the relative frequencies by row. So we're looking at boys, and we're looking at, okay, out of 100% of the boys, 12% can whistle, 88% can't whistle. With girls, 60% can whistle, and then 40% cannot whistle, okay? And so what we want to do is determine, is there a pattern? And what we're realizing, based on this data alone, is that boys can't whistle as good as girls. Okay, girls tend to be able to whistle better than boys. So determine if there is an association, and yes, there is an association. And the reason why is because of the way the numbers are, the difference in the numbers, okay? So what we're looking for is in the can whistle. The difference between 12% and 60 is pretty significant, okay? Versus 88 that can't, and then 40 that can't, okay? And then even going here and saying, all right, looking at the columns and saying 12% versus 88%, and then looking at these columns and going 60% to 40%, okay? And those are pretty significant differences in those values, okay? Okay, let's take a look at the next part. And this helps explain, in this relative frequency table, okay, this has association, okay? So this has association. Okay, and this table doesn't. So does not, let's write does not. Have association. Okay, and the reason why is that because in this table, your values are pretty different with each other. However, in this table, the values are similar. So there isn't an association, okay? So you can't draw a conclusion from this table, okay? Not like you can here. Here, it's clear that girls are better whistlers than boys, but here you can't make that same, judgment call, all right? Okay, let's move on to the last one. And we're comparing the same idea. Now, what we want to identify here is looking at the relative frequencies by the column, okay? So first, what I notice is that, we have, can whistle 100%, cannot whistle, okay, out of 100%. Boys, 20% can't whistle versus 80% of girls that can. Here it says that 73% of boys can whistle or cannot whistle versus girls, which is 27%. So, this definitely shows us, I think this shows us a better association. So a better association. Okay. to show that girls can whistle better than boys. Okay, and what we're looking for, and this is just based off the information. Okay, based off the information that we are given, we are drawing this conclusion. Okay, this is maybe not necessarily true for all scenarios and all people, but that's what we have for this situation currently. Okay, so that's all I got for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in a bit. Thanks a lot. Bye.